Paul Foster-Bell.
Tēnā koe e te mana whakawā. Good afternoon, Mr. Speaker. Sir, I rise to speak on behalf of the Government in this Arts Centre of Christchurch Trust Bill second reading debate. Far be it from me to correct the Honourable Member Dr Megan Woods, but I did just want to raise one small issue. In her speech, she described this as a local bill. Of course, it's important to recognise that this is in fact a private bill. And a private bill is something, whilst not abhorrent to this House, it is relatively rare because in general, as a constitutional principle, we prefer to pass general legislation which has equal effect for all. But I actually agree with previous speakers in this debate that such is the value of the Christchurch Arts Centre, not only to Christchurch but to New Zealand and even in a global context, that it is appropriate that we put in place specific enabling legislation private to them to enshrine the objects and powers of the Trust and its board in legislation to protect this asset which is of enormous value to the people of Canterbury and to the citizens of New Zealand. Sir, I had the, I suppose, pleasure of training as an archaeologist at the University of Otago. And I bring this up for a couple of reasons. Firstly, I'm not entirely unaware of some of the issues around heritage management and of rehabilitating dilapidated old ruins, having spent several years during my university time with a trowel and brush and shovel in such sites. But secondly, because the University of Otago, like the Arts Centre, is in that wonderful neo-Gothic style. In fact, the the Christchurch Arts Centre is described as collegiate or collegial neo-Gothic. It is, as the very distinguished and discerning member Scott Simpson pointed out, it was built to emulate the mores of Victorian Britain, but it is actually unique in the world as a consolidated example of that style of architecture in a precinct, not just individual buildings, but consistent across entire city blocks, and it is something that is very precious to us. In fact, prior to the devastating earthquakes, the Arts Centre precinct, along with the Christchurch Cathedral, was being considered for recognition in World Heritage status, to be inscribed on the World Heritage list by UNESCO because of its unique nature and its value, not only for New Zealand but globally. So, sir, this is a timely bill. It is important that after 30 or 40 years of operation we modernise some provisions that govern the original trust. But I think we should also note the work that's been done by the existing Trust Board, the excellent work and the good management of the staff, led by Andre Lovett as Chief Executive Officer of the Arts Centre, because they are in a strong position due to that good management. Sir, after the devastating first earthquake in 2010, that did a lot of physical damage, a lot less human damage and death and destruction was wreaked, but after the significant physical damage, the Christchurch Arts Centre very sensibly reinsured. They settled quickly and reinsured. So the reason we now have one of the largest, in fact, as Scott Simpson said, the largest heritage restoration project currently underway in the world is that they were sensible in their approach to insurance, and they managed to secure a nearly $300 million payout from insurers to enable them to undertake that 7-year restoration process. The additional funding, of course, being applied by the government does help, but in a situation where we are inevitably forced to prioritise and to juggle between hospitals, schools, arts precincts and other buildings, it is useful to have significant money coming in from insurance providers. Sir, I do not have the connections to Canterbury as some other members have, but I do have a fondness for the Arts Centre building. I enjoyed David McPhail's play Muldoon there, performed in the Court Theatre it would have been about 10 years ago in the early 2000s. And having visited, along with colleagues from the Local Government and Environment Select Committee, to have a look at the work that's been done there, it's very, very clear that not only is there high quality in terms of the management of the organisation, but it really is a United Nations of restoration. You hear Irish accents, you see people from the Czech Republic, those from the UK, those from Europe, from Asia, all around the world contributing to maintaining some of these crafts and trades that have actually been lost over the years, but are now being re-inculcated and retrained in. So not only plasterers and stonemasons, but also people who work in wood, people who are experts in the electrical wiring of heritage buildings to avoid the unfortunate risk of fire that you get when you have these buildings that certain fundaments of can't be changed. So, sir, this is a good piece of legislation. The objects of this legislation are not for government to step in and determine on behalf of the people of Canterbury how the centre should be managed. In fact, quite the opposite. This bill enshrines a role for the Trust Board that includes holding the Trust property for the objects that have been laid out. And these objects are holding and developing the Arts Centre as a unique and outstanding cultural centre for use by the people of Christchurch, but also, and equally importantly in my view, to foster, promote and facilitate an interest and involvement in the arts, culture, creativity, the creative industries and educational purposes. And we saw this in play when we visited the Arts Centre site and had explained to us that in its previous incarnation the buildings were used for such features as cafes and art galleries, and of course there will be those facilities in the restored Arts Centre. But we were also shown the fact that they will have state-of-the-art laboratories, including 3D printing, this new technology which allows something to be designed on a computer and then realised in plastic or polymer form almost instantaneously. This is very expensive equipment, but it will take the arts that are developed there to a new level and very appropriate for this modern age in which we live. So also the powers of the Trust Board, as enshrined in this bill, are fairly far-reaching. In fact, they have the full capacity to carry on or undertake any activity which advances the objects of the Arts Centre. So that includes the acquisition of further real or personal property of any nature that may be useful for the maintenance of the Arts Centre, to let or lease the lands and buildings so that the buildings can be let out and put to use, because as we know, when heritage buildings are engaged in useful purpose, they're more likely to be valued, respected, but also maintained. They're allowed to construct and re-erect and improve and maintain and provide further buildings, and of course that's important in a situation where we're in the middle of a major restoration project. The Trust Board will be empowered to employ staff, an important factor also in terms of managing such a significant site. They will be able to borrow money. They will have the ability to make a business decision as to whether they need to seek a mortgage or debenture or some sort of injection of capital to enable them to achieve their aims, although of course, as I've mentioned, that $300 million insurance payment does make significant help towards the reconstruction, and they're able to generate public subscriptions and donations. So they're able to do a wide range of things. This is not a bill which is about the government putting more power in its own hands. In fact, this is a bill that modernises the settings for the Arts Centre Trust Board and actually empowers them to deliver. Sir, I do want to raise a few other points. Can I congratulate the Minister, the Honourable Nicky Wagner, who has demonstrated, I think, in the excellent majority with which she held the seat of Christchurch Central at the last election, that she's an incredibly hard-working MP for that seat and has been a passionate and tireless advocate for this project in particular. I would like to acknowledge the Chair of the Select Committee and all of our colleagues. And given the comments from Mr Mark, I would actually have to agree with his description of the committee as being a group of people who do have an interest in working together collegially, which is appropriate when we're dealing with collegial Gothic buildings, but also in taking a sophisticated and I think quite enlightened approach to dealing with this issue and making sure that the right things are done. The committee did suggest a number of amendments. There probably isn't time to go through each and every one of those today, but I think in a general sense, I think it is important that we achieve a position where people are on the Trust Board due to the skill set that they bring, rather than representing specific interest groups in society. We need the people who have the accounting knowledge, legal knowledge, government expertise, but importantly, heritage management expertise on the governance body for the Arts Centre so that it can be run well into the future. Thank you very much, sir.
The next call is a split call. Jan Logie, 5.